Guys, I am very honored to have with me one of the greatest people, actually, person that I have been communicating with. Greg Weaver, by the way, is, if you have no idea who he is, look him up on YouTube right now. Look him up. His channel is The Audio Analyst. I had to grab some notes, okay, to just give you a high-level overview of what this man has been doing for, what, 5 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades, Greg? Yeah. Long time.
Just 5,
sorry. Just have an idea. Greg, actually, he started selling audio gear before he can legally drive a car, okay? Yeah. Think about that. That's how he started. Then he went on to manage audio retail stores. He had his first print magazine, The Audio Analyst, in 1988. I mean, I was like 9 years old. Think about that. I mean, this man was already printing. Like, he was already part of it. He had his own magazine at that point, and he's been part of a lot of publications. You guys it should be no surprise. You guys know the Absolute Sound, Stereo Times, Tone Audio, and Soundstage. He's all over the place. Greg, I want to thank you for giving me and my viewers the opportunity to interview you, to ask you questions that I know a lot of people want to ask you, but unfortunately, you are a busy man, just like every other reviewer. It is impossible to answer everyone's questions. Guys, I have literally taken juicy questions, for lack of a better word, to ask Greg Weaver. Questions that you guys finally want answers for. Greg is going to be open, candid here, and it is going to give you his raw opinion on things that, many topics that I think always go unanswered and that you never see on a magazine, on a publication, anywhere. Greg, thank you for the time here, man. It is Sunday. It is actually Monday, May 30th, almost 7 p.m. You are here giving me the opportunity to interview you, and I can't thank you enough, man. I can't thank you enough for this chance, for this opportunity to just bring you on my channel. I would like to just begin right now by letting everyone hear a little bit about you, and give us the details. Tell us about you.
First of all, thanks for having me. We started communicating after Expo. You were kind enough to come up to me and say hello, say some kind words. We were both, shows are madhouses, but I appreciated that. So I reached out to you, had some things to share, and I think we've had a pretty good conversation so far, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm definitely old school. I started. Some of my earliest memories as a kid had to do with music. Radio, the console in the living room. But as you mentioned, I was selling stereos before I could drive a car. People who were friends of my parents, they're bridge players that played. Their son opened a stereo shop in a town near me about 30 miles away. And I'd never heard of such thing, a place where all they do is sell stereo gear. Oh my God. So I went over and I actually had an older friend of mine drive me over and picked out a few things that I could afford because I had a job, and took him home. And within 3 weeks or so, one of my buddies, who also was my age and couldn't drive, said, "Wow, this is really cool. Where'd you get it?" I told him. He goes, "Wow, how'd you get over it?" I said, "Well," he said, "Well, what should I, I'd like to get some." I said, "Well, here, buy this." So I sold it to him, took that money and some more, and went back about 3-4 weeks later. Bought some more stuff, took it home. Same thing happened. A couple weeks later, somebody bought that for me. I go back the third time, and when I walked in, I saw Keith. I swear to God, I saw this light bulb go on over his head when he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm selling." He's like, "Holy shit, come here. Take one of these, take one of these, take a pair of these." And that was the beginning. It just, and then, I was into computing, which was my main job, but I started reading Stereophile. I started reading Absolute Sound in '73. In fact, I have an issue #2 that's signed by Harry Curson. I got to be good friends with Harry over the years before he passed away. But the next thing I knew, I was drawn to the business. And I was selling stuff, and soon I was selling more than everybody else on the floor because I didn't give a rat's butt about this week's spiffs or specials. I would listen to what they had to say. Do you want to, what kind of music do you listen to? What size room are you in? What do you want to do? How do you want to expand in the future? And I would sell them what they needed. And if they didn't have the money to buy that today, I sent them home and waited for them to come back and buy it. And it worked out. The next thing I found out, I was managing stores, salons. I started my magazine in '88. Don't ever start a print magazine, by the way. Oh my God. But it just got to the point where I had done so much and heard so much and advised so many people. And I was amazed at the things I could hear, the differences that I could hear in everyday gear. So I started this magazine because I felt it was a way I could express information. And I didn't think that some of the magazines were doing a terribly great job all the time. That led to being hired to do this for another magazine, to do that. I was hired to help. I was the design team leader for some of the most expensive cables ever released by the year 2000 for harmonic technology. I've done all that, and dude, it's an illness. I don't go to the meetings. I don't care. I'm sitting in front of about a $750,000 system every day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a pleasure to be allowed to share my insights and my thoughts and my opinions. And it's cool as hell. People seem to want them. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of them. I'm one of them. Absolutely.
It's huge fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's an interesting journey. I mean, you've been doing it for such a long time. And guys, just for the record, I had emailed Greg. We had a great communication through email. And one of the things I told him is, man, this guy, he is a walking encyclopedia. I mean, he can literally detail things that I am at 42 unable to remember, like things of my past. He can walk you and tell you to the T, this is the name, and then this plus this equal to that. He's so detailed with what he gives you. It's ridiculous. Like, honestly, I looked at some of the conversations we've had, Greg, and I'm like, your memory must be through the roof, man, because Jesus.
Thank you, but I do use notes. I've been writing about this shit for
Sure.
50 years. So I have a pile of notes to go back when I don't remember exactly what I thought. So, yeah. I mean, thanks for that, but some of it is written down somewhere for me to remember.
Yeah, I was just the level of you can picture things when you talk and when you write. I can picture things, and I thought that's kind of what drew me to start to ask you questions about several topics, and one of them, of course, is, and I'm going to get right into it.
Sure.
Let's get right into it. How has the landscape changed for reviewers, comparing today and what you did today to what you did when you first started?
Well, if we go back to the first real subjective review magazine, which was The Stereophile in '64, here was a guy who had written for one of the generic magazines that everything sounded the same. It was about features and whistles and bells. And he said, damn it, this sounds different. And he started a publication that was pretty irregular and pretty sporadic, but it influenced a lot of people. Harry came along in 1973 and started the Absolute Sound, which totally screwed me up, man. That magazine was just way out there. The very first issue, he talked about taking a pair of the Advent Largers and taking two pair, putting one upside down, tweeter to tweeter. I tried it and I shit my pants. It was insane what this stuff could do. So anyway, at that time, there were 30 reviewers on the planet. Mm-hmm. I mean, 30 guys that anybody would say, yeah, that's a reviewer, and I know what he's doing. But today, and this is not meant in any way to be derogatory or anything at all, but today, anybody can be a reviewer.
Sure.
Okay.
Or have an opinion.
Yeah. And this is the thing with the internet and all these outlets, anyone can offer an opinion.
Yeah.
But there is a decided difference between having an opinion and having an informed opinion.
Or a qualified opinion, as I say.
Well, that's what I'm getting at with being informed.
Qualified opinions.
Having the context and the references to put things in context. I mean, if you've only heard, so, and you know, somebody, it was funny, I was talking to the editor of another magazine who will remain nameless right now, just 2 or 3 days ago. He's like, you know, it's nuts to me. This guy just wrote this review of this $10,000 pair of loudspeakers, said it was the greatest thing since white sliced bread. And when I asked him how many other pairs of $10,000 loudspeakers he'd heard, he said, "Oh, none." So,
Thank you.
so to me, this review, while it's inspired, and I'm sure the guy believes everything he was saying,
Sure.
it's not very informative because it's not an informed opinion. Had he heard 300 different pair of speakers in that price range and still thought it was the best, go for it. So again, I'm not criticizing. And what I told you in some of our first conversations was, what I liked about you is you have what my Zen teachers had always called right mindfulness. I think you're coming at this sincerely, genuinely, and earnestly. I don't see any ego in there. I don't see anything. I mean, you have fun, but there's nothing wrong with that. Right. God forbid I don't have fun. The minute I'm stopping having fun, just put me in a grave. Okay, it's over. Yeah. So I think the difference between then and now is today, you type in review of X, you'll find 30 different reviews probably.
Yep.
2 or 3 that would qualify as what I would call informed reviews, and a whole shitload of opinions. And everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
That alone isn't necessarily enough to make you go and check out the product. You know, I've been doing this for going on 50. Well, I started writing in 88. So what's that? 35 years since I've started publishing. So I've been lucky enough to develop an audience who either hate me or love me. And I'm okay with either.
Yeah. You always
the ones that get it, the ones that have followed me long enough are able to read into my work and understand when something really is engaging to me and I want to talk about it. And by the way, I don't write about anything that isn't anymore. There's no need to.
Right.
So it's kind of nice to have the ability to look at someone's work over time and say, this guy is of the same kind of mindset as I am. He likes the same kind of sound or the same kind of performance, versus not knowing the context from where the review is coming from. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people value with my work is that my biases are out there. Everybody knows what I like, why I like it, and what I don't like, or why it doesn't matter to me as much. You know, I've said this a million times. Mono, dude, I've never heard anything in mono in my life. And unless you have a hearing impairment or a damaged ear, neither have you.
Right.
Because when that guitar is played over there, there's 2 different arrival times, and you hear it in stereo. I've had these people, oh, stereo is just an artifact of stereo recording. Well, yeah, it is, because that's how we hear. But it's obvious to me that for this hobby to grow and prosper, there's going to be a younger generation of advocates, critics, and guides to take up the reins. But those people have to convey their information through context and perspective. And they have to do research and provide context for these positions. And I see that as just one more way where I might be able to have an impact on the future of this industry. And that's the big difference to me. When it started, there were 30 guys who were, you know, the 30 apostles. What they said was truth. You couldn't dispute it. That's just how it was. Today, you can pick your disciple, your whatever, and go wherever you want.
That is very true. I agree. And that is something that I wish the viewers understood, that you have to really, can't say it in a better way, but you have to be able to see right through the bullshit and screen out what shouldn't even be, you shouldn't even be reading and looking at some of the things that are out there. People with all these opinions that, to your point, they walk into a room and they're, oh my God, it's the best I've ever heard. Sir, excuse me, what do you have at home? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, just people don't get it, Greg. I've been so vocal about this constantly, Greg. And some get it, some do not. And that's fine. That's everybody's. But and another thing is, I've said it before, the forums. The forums are,
oh my God,
they're flooded with individuals who just give an opinion. And when you look at their handle and check out their gallery of pictures of their system, and they're giving an opinion on a power cord that is worth more than the entire system. That's what I'm saying, right? So, you know, and it took me a minute, by the way, to understand that. But I knew that if I was on a quest to learn, one, I had to learn, I had to spend the money. Number two, be able to live with this stuff. I think having first-hand ownership, and I know when you review a product, and that's a question that I'll ask you to, you have to spend some time with it to get acquainted, to understand, to be intimate with the product.
This is a crucial issue, buddy. You know as well as I do, going to a show may set that kernel of potential for you, but rarely at a show are you going to get a chance to hear what something can sound like. And when you live with it for an extended time, it makes all the difference in the world. And I've had this discussion with so many people who say, oh, I had a viewer on my channel say, you know, we all know my $6,500 rig sounds as good as your $100,000 rig.
Yeah. Oh.
And I said, I brought it up in a video, and I said, look, this demonstrates a point that I'm not trying to pick on anyone. I'm not trying to diminish anybody's capabilities to own stuff. But if you have no experience in this stratospheric kind of equipment,
yes,
okay, you have no opinion, because look, if you haven't heard it, you don't have an opinion. You're allowed to say things like, I can't imagine it could do that, or I just don't see how, but you can't say it can't be. And this guy, so then he looks at my homepage, and he sees the system, and he says, oh, I meant 200,000. I'm like, dude, you're still off. It's closer to $750,000.
Exactly.
But the point I'm trying to make is that the familiarity comes, you know, when you live with stuff like this every day, you are able to distinguish immediately what is good from what is not as good. And I'll guarantee you, when you live with the kind of gear we live with, you walk into a room with 3 different $700 pair of speakers, and you're going to be able to tell right away which $700 pair of speakers are doing the best job.
Yep.
It's that kind of thing.
And always spending seat time, as I call it, in front of this level of equipment, going through, you know, obviously blood, sweat, and tears, because you have to learn how to mix and match and what goes with what and find the right cable. So I think that it is something that is oftentimes overlooked. The guy who loves to say, I can't believe you would spend that kind of money. I guarantee you, if you come into my home, I'm going to wipe the floor with your system, and I only have a third of the money that you have in yours. I don't get it. I just don't know if they're trying to justify what they have bought.
My belief is that it's twofold. And I am not trying to judge anyone for the disposable income they wish to spend on their gear, what they can afford or can't afford. That's entirely up to you. My point is, if you've got a $600 system or a $6,000 system, if it makes you tap your toes and hum along and sing and be happy and be joyful, great. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Worry about what I listen to.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
If you want to get better, we can talk.
Yep.
But if you don't enjoy what your rig is doing, you need to rethink it. You need to hear music. And dude, you know as well as I do, you can put together a meager system that's quite musical.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I've never, you know, I had these people, oh, you just think you have to have. I've never said you have to spend this kind of money. If you want to understand state of the art, what can be achieved today, you know, these guys are chipping away at reality week by week. Okay. They get us closer to breaking that barrier between live and playback. Every week, practically, something comes out that moves us just that much closer. And until you're familiar with that capability, I'm not knocking your $700 turntable, but don't tell me it's as good as a $200,000 turntable.
It's not, yeah.
And again, let me make a very brief point. Price alone is not a measurement of quality.
Right.
Okay. By the same token, I'll guarantee you that the best sound you're going to get is from the most expensive products available today, not from the less expensive ones. You can get excellent sound affordably, no question. But pushing that envelope and breaking new barriers, it comes with a high return, because people, you know, you're trying new materials, new ideas, new concepts, new directions. And it costs money because you're building these one-off typically, and you're paying for the butt. You were talking to Kevin and found out what some of the costs are that he's doing. I've never ever indicated that price is an arbiter of performance. By the same token, I'll guarantee you that the best sounds achievable are pretty expensive compared to.
Unfortunately, and they also have to understand that you didn't start with a $750,000 system. You started here, and then you started to realize there are levels to this.
Dude, I started with Rotel amplification.
Me too.
A Girard turntable. I had a Girard 0100C back in 1873. I had a Stanton 681 Triple E, and then my buddy got the first Shure V15 Type 3. It came out in June or July of 1973. And dude, it was $80. $80. Holy shit.
Oh my God.
We were paying $30, $35 for a cartridge. This thing was $80. But he had it on a BIC 980 belt-driven turntable. He had Bob Carver's 4000B preamplifier, 4000 preamplifier with the autocorrelator, 700B monos, and a pair of Winslow Burho's the EPI 400 mini toners. Dude, he turned the 45 RPM of Lady from Styx on his turntable at full tilt. Dust was falling from the ceiling. I mean, it sounded like we were at a show. It was amazing.
Wow.
So yeah.
Do you feel that the audio industry needs more presence on YouTube? Magazine publications, do you feel that that's something they need to get more involved with? Because
absolutely.
There's also a lot of conversation revolving that. We typically know that publication is, print, or whether it's in a tablet, actual books. And I feel that because we live in a fast-paced society today, digital age, oftentimes we don't have the time anymore to do this and read. People want their information oftentimes through their ears. You want to be driving, headed to work, and hear someone's podcast, someone's YouTube channel. You got to be multitasking, cleaning the pool while you're listening to your favorite.
Quite honestly, that's why I started my channel when I did. Yeah. When COVID hit and I realized I couldn't go to 3 or 4 shows every year anymore, or at least until in the foreseeable future, I started the channel because most boomers like me, and I've been a writer since I was in junior high school. The woman that raised me was an English teacher, and you seem to think I write well, which makes me happy, but not everybody has the time to read a 2,500 or 3,500 word article, which can be very descriptive. And the reason I chose to do both is that the newer audience is, they want to watch what they're watching while they're ordering their coffee at Starbucks in the morning and get brought up to speed on that new amplifier.
Yep.
And look, there are probably a lot of boomers out there. I was an IT engineer until I retired in November. So, dude, I'll guarantee you, I understand the whole thing. Not all boomers do, and that's okay. I still write so that some of those guys can stay up. But the younger crowd, the Gen X, the Gen Z, the the millennials, they typically prefer to live on this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think there's a huge amount of merit and a huge amount of value to be had by putting content out that's worthwhile for those platforms. And that's, like I said, that's why I started my channel in May of 2020, right after the lockdowns.
One of the things that I mentioned to you through our conversations was the fact that it would be cool, for instance, you are reviewing a product for Absolute Sound, for any of the publications that you currently work with, and the review is published. You go back to your notes and you say, you know what, I want to do it after the review video, where I can sit down and talk about, okay, so these are afterthoughts, things that I probably think I missed that I want to touch up on. And then you begin to talk about that. Or the other way around, you can begin to give an introduction on video about your upcoming review, where you're going to to me, that's added value. That's your publication, your article, and you're stacking on top another way to get more simply more viewers on top of you, more eyes on you.
Totally.
And I think that is so important. I think a lot of these magazines are failing to do that. You don't see well-constructed YouTube channels. And to me, I don't see, and again, this is going to be something that I want you to answer, is I don't see print in probably 10 years. I think it'll have to be on video. I think eventually people, you know what it is too, Greg? I'm going to tell you what it is flat out. If I'm talking about the magical S7 behind me, they believe me because they're behind me.
Yeah.
Anybody can write anything. I can go over there to somebody's home and type an article and create a review and tell you how great the Wilson Audio WAM is. I've never seen it in my room. So there's more validation, more truthfulness when they can see you on video with the product behind you. At that point, it's kind of like they're not going to not believe what you're saying because it's in your room, right? And so I think that's the added value of video.
Yeah, there's some merit to that point. I don't think it's all that exclusive. That if I don't think anybody doubts that when I say something about a product I've had in your review that I'm winging it or making it up. But the validity of seeing the products that you've chosen to live with in your system when you talk about it is definitely something that makes a stronger impact.
Right.
But I do think I agree with you that there's no reason not to combine print. I personally don't think print will ever go away. Okay. It may not have anywhere near the impact it used to have. Completely agree with that. But buddy, the written word and language is magic when it's done right.
Oh no, yes.
I just read a book from a colleague of mine, Garrett Hongo. He put out a book called The Perfect Sound. What a freaking great read. Anyway, the advantage to what you're suggesting, and it's something I've suggested since I was at Absolute Sound. Well, I don't think certain print magazines are doing anywhere near what they could be doing. One of the reasons I started the channel, as I said, was to cross into a younger generation of people and get my work exposed and maybe have an impact on some younger people. But your point is that these major magazines, the two in particular that I know I'm talking about,
yep,
they're missing a point. They're missing a big point that would build their subscription rates and build longevity into their entire system. But they don't see it that way. They're too erudite. They're too aloof. This is we're the written word only. And don't get me wrong, I'll defend it till the end of time. I love to write. But the important thing to me is to get our message out. If people don't get the message, if they don't read it, how are they going to know? So,
yeah.
And the whole afterthought thing is very good because quite often, I won't say quite often, there are deadlines when you're writing. You have the thing has to go to press at a certain time. So you may try and get a good overall sense of something, but something crucial may have missed. And going back to an afterthought and say, hey, this was true, but I also think this now. I think this is important. I think it's a great thing that none of the majors are taking advantage of.
I want to get into something very interesting here, which I've wanted to know, and I think a lot of my viewers have wanted to know, is what does it take to get a product review by a major magazine?
It's interesting. I just, I